Welcome to Lying by Golf, the podcast that brings you inside stories and conversations from across the world of golf. I'm Ross McGuire, and today I'm joined by internationally respected coach Hugh Marr. We talk about Hugh's transition from tour life to building one of the most impactful coach education platforms in golf. Hugh shares what drives great coaching, why staying curious and open-minded is essential, and how working with people he disagrees with has made him better. It's a must listen for anyone serious about growth in the game, whether you play, coach, or both. If you're enjoying the podcast, please share it with your friends and subscribe. It really helps grow the community. Let's go over to you. Hugh, we'll jump straight in. So you've worked with a variety of players over the years. How has your approach to coaching evolved from when you started and until today?
Well, there's similarities from when I started, and there's been quite a lot of differences. Obviously, when I started coaching, and I'm going to get mid-late 90s, technology really wasn't a thing. So even a video camera was a big, bulky, very expensive thing. So I started off working with no technology, and then I was very lucky that the boss I worked for at the time, he and a member clubbed together to buy this big, clunky old video camera, and then that became something that I started to use, not really having the first idea what I was looking for. But one thing I've always been fascinated by and passionate about is trying to base as much of my work as possible on fact. So getting away from these kind of anecdotal systems or philosophies that have lived through the game from day one, and starting to build it much more on what's actually happening. And obviously more by good fortune than anything else, but that coincided with technology really taking off in golf. And even when I was starting coaching, and with my own game at the time, I was keeping stats. I guess you'd call it a data-driven approach. And as my career has gone on, I've had access to more data, more technology to help me do a better job. Now, that has meant that I've become a much better coach because I know what the facts are, or I know most of the facts, or at least some of them. And being able to use technology has given me access to what actually happens and how best that I can coach that. And that helps because I'm able to effectively means test my coaching. If I'm asking a player to move a component in their golf swing and it's not having the result that I'm looking for, then I've either got the wrong component or I'm missing something. So it's a great way for me to be able to stay on top of my coaching and drive my own coaching, because a lot of the time I didn't have answers when I was younger, and I wanted to find answers. So I'm now in a position where my day-to-day work guides where I go and develop, because I'm able to identify the areas that I don't have a full understanding, or I may not have an answer at all. So it's mostly the journey has been driven by the evolution of technology. But at the very start, I was still very much about, okay, let's base this on facts. Let's try and find out as much as possible in terms of what actually happens, and use data to help drive my coaching. That's basically the journey in a nutshell.
Brilliant. And I was just going to ask you as well, and I know we're kind of jumping straight in here, but we'll wind back and get to where it all started. But what would you say is the most rewarding part of being a coach and seeing your players succeed? And actually, I guess you see them through challenges as well, but what's the most rewarding part for you?
I like helping people. I think that's one of the reasons that you get into coaching, or certainly it's one of the reasons I got into coaching. But actually, the most rewarding thing for me is continually developing my understanding. And I've gone through phases in my career where I've got away from the things that really stimulate me, learning, understanding, finding the best way to put that into my coaching system. That's still probably the most important thing for me, and that the students benefit because I'm constantly evolving to match their needs.
Absolutely. And then we'll get back to the start as well, Hugh. So you were telling me before you joined, before we started recording, that you're from McGuire. But how
Yeah,
did you first get into golf? What was it that got you into the game?
we still have a little cottage in the north of Scotland, and basically the only thing to do was play golf every day. My grandmother had a set of clubs in the corner of the garage. And so that's what I started playing golf with, old wooden clubs, a kind of mix and match set, and just straight away hooked. I mean, I was always very sporty at school. I enjoyed playing lots of sport, but I think you hear a lot of people, golfers talking about it, that they get more driven by individual sports because you don't rely on anyone else. It's all on you.
Yeah.
And you could play a blinder in your football and still lose, but if you played really well in golf, you generally did quite nicely, and that appealed to me. And literally the minute I started playing golf, I was trying to buy magazines, books. Obviously, no internet in those days. I was fascinated by just the game, everything about the game.
And did you think quite early on that you were going to be a coach, or were you still pursuing just development of your game itself at the start?
No, I mean, I think that certainly that generation in Scotland, we had a very strong tartan tour, and pretty much every assistant had aspirations to play the game. It's very different now. Now, I mean, it turns out that maybe one of the smartest things that's happened in my career is I figured out early that I was pretty crap and not good enough to be able to make a proper living doing it. So but actually, when I've been able to reflect now, I'm like, even when I was a kid, I was trying to help my mum play golf. As a kid at the club, I was always helping other members. I think that deep down, I knew I was going to end up coaching.
Yeah. And was there any particular people you looked up to when you were younger that inspired you around the game as well?
Well, Ledbetter was a big influence because sort of that was when, so we're now talking late 80s, I guess, that he'd embarked on his work with Faldo and Nick Price, and turned Faldo from a very good player into the best player in the world, multiple major winner. So Ledbetter was probably the first really big influence. I had lots of influences in Scotland. The guy I was lucky to work with Charles Darnay, who supported me a huge amount. He went from Buchanan Castle, which was my club, to Rosemount, to Blairgowrie, and Charlie was incredibly kind to me. My influences probably after that came from just the people I was around. So very lucky through friends to spend a lot of time with Peter Costas in the States. Jim McLean was a huge influence on me because he was really the first guy to I mean, when you look at 8-step swing and X Factor golf, he was probably one of the first guys to base his principles around something more than anecdote, which is really interesting. Outside of that, Dennis Pugh has been a huge influence. Clive Tucker's been a huge influence. The TPI guys have been a huge influence just because, again, it appealed to my kind of sports science leaning, I guess. But probably the single biggest influence has been the people that I coach, and that I just wanted to make them better. And let's face it, for the first 10 years, I had very few answers, but it constantly forced me to go and find answers. So there's been a number of influences along the way, but in reality, it's all been driven by the people I coach.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, how do you balance teaching technical skills versus helping people with their general approach to the game? And I know you're obviously talking there in this instance with high level elite golfers, but do you have a differentiation between the two depending on who you're working with?
No, because ultimately it doesn't matter whether I've been working with a couple of club members this morning who are passionate about golf and they want to play better golf. Their drive is that it's something that they love and they want to get better at it. Whereas when you're dealing with genuinely elite players, their drive is they need to make a living, and the demands are no different in that I need to make the players better as soon as possible. I can't turn around to a tour pro and say, listen, mate, it's going to take you 6 months to process these changes. You're probably going to miss every cut. So I have to. The way I describe it is that tour coaching is basically quick tip coaching around a plan. And the reality is that's pretty much the way I approach any student these days. That can I make them better now? I'm not a believer that quick tips are necessarily bad, because ultimately if it puts the club in better space to hit better shots, how can that be a bad thing? I've never been able to understand that. But yeah, I mean, basically tour pros, their living depends on it, and that's important. But also with leisure golfers, I think it's almost more important because it's the free time, it's the free money, it's the passion. And always being cognizant of the fact that if I do a bad job, I could make them hate the game. If I do a really bad job, I could drive them away from the game.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
they don't have the time, and a lot of them don't have the motivation to get worse, to get better. They don't have the time to go and hit hundreds of range balls on a weekly basis. So I have to make them better in the simplest way possible, and that is exactly the same philosophy that worked on tour for so long.
And what kind of challenges do you see with that, Hugh? I know that obviously you're a very experienced coach, but then you're dealing with all levels of golfers. What kind of things do you hit up against in terms of, is their movement pattern harder to change? Is it their technique
No,
is so bad? Or is it just a mix depending who it is?
there's literally no pattern at all, because some people can change their technique remarkably easily. The downside to those players is that they can generally deteriorate remarkably easily. But the reality is you're coaching a sport to human beings, and every human being comes in different shapes and sizes, with different issues, with different emotional states, intellectual states. There's so much that goes into helping players get better. And I'm always very wary of coaches that put the golf swing or people into certain buckets, because the reality is that everyone has their own bucket, and you're forced to deal with each individual on their terms, rather than trying to apply a kind of more method-driven approach to everyone.
Yeah, and would you say even within that though, is there any sort of common mistakes you see that, or not maybe mistakes, but common opportunities amongst players for improvement, especially when they're not at that elite level as well?
Every golfer's got opportunities for improvement, and it looks different to all. If you've got a golfer that just wants to hit better shots, then there's probably a chance you begin working more on the mechanical element of it. If you've got a player that wants to bring their handicap down, you'd probably take a slightly more holistic approach and start, okay, well, where are you losing your most shots? Is it 6 feet and in? Is it off the tee? And then you can focus the work you do with the student in a relevant area. Truth be told, again, people have different motivations. I've got clients who are really happy just hitting lots more good shots than they did, regardless of score. And then
Yeah, I mean, I
then
guess that for some people that's it, right? It's not necessarily what you score. If you can go out and play and hit some really nice shots compared to before, that can be your happiness.
how each player derives enjoyment from the game is different.
Yeah.
And again, as a coach, you've got to be aware of what that is and make sure that you're helping them in their terms. But it isn't it. Yes, you see some commonalities in great golf swings or in tour level golf swings that don't exist in club level golf swings, but everyone's different. And that's the beauty of it, that you'll never have two lessons back to back that are completely identical.
Yeah, I mean, even for myself playing just regular competitions, I play with all different levels of golfer. And I'm certainly not in the elite level. I mean, I'm a reasonable golfer, but I find myself, every golfer's always got something that stands out. Or typically, they've usually got something that stands out. They might not drive it great, but then they chip it really well. And you sort of really notice that. You see someone who's maybe off like a 15, 20 handicap and they're chipping like a 5 handicapper and they can't hit the ball. It's incredible.
And it's understanding that if their role is if their job is to get the handicap down, that's what drives them. Then you're going to target the areas that are going to see the biggest improvement in score. I mean, it's a very sweeping statement, but basically tour pros are significantly better inside 6 feet than the rest of us. Significantly better.
Yeah.
But it's not particularly sexy to work on your 6 foot in putting. It's not particularly sexy on Instagram to work on your 6 foot putting.
Doesn't have a tracer on it, Hugh, so it doesn't look that good.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, each student has got a different requirement, and identifying how they derive enjoyment from the game is, I think, really important. Obviously, when you're working with tour pros, there's still an element of that, but it boils much more down to, right, you're losing 2 strokes a week on the green, and if you did that, you'd be significantly richer. It's a very simple equation.
And then looking back at your career as well, Hugh, What kind of moments stand out for you? You've obviously coached, and again, you've coached all levels of players, but what moments stand out for you that are memories that are really cherished by you as well?
I mean, a couple of instances that I talk about quite frequently. The Ryder Cup in Paris was an amazing experience because it was with a player that I'd worked with for a long time, and his main goal at the time was to play Ryder Cup, and he qualified in the end. He wanted to play that Ryder Cup because Thomas Bjorn was the captain. Thomas was a big mentor of Thorbjorn's. So to sort of work towards something and achieve it was incredibly rewarding. But then obviously to be part of what was probably the most dominant European performance in history around a great golf course, a course that I absolutely love, with the crowds, with the just the noise, the excitement, I mean everything about it was amazing. And to be honest with you, I think that was the moment where I suddenly decided, you know what, I don't want to coach on tour anymore. I'm done with it. That was kind of, it felt like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, again, it took me a couple of years to figure it out because I'm not that smart, but it definitely, that definitely felt like a kind of a big point in the career. And because it was a player that I'd worked with for a long period of time, that it was, he got better and better and better. It was just,
And he
felt,
played awesome in that Ryder
yeah,
Cup as well, personally, didn't he?
he was fantastic. And then the other one is actually not necessarily experience related. It was Augusta in 2020, and I'm stood on the back of the range watching a player. I've got this habit when I'm happy with what a player is doing, I'll just walk away and look at them from afar. And Ledbetter, who was a major influence of mine, Ledbetter came up and put his arm around me and said, "You've done an amazing job with that player." And I'm like, "Okay, that's it. I'm done. It's time for me to do something
Hanging up
else."
the boots.
I've completed golf coaching, because it was, again, it would be remiss if we didn't all recognise how important a role Ledbetter made in making golf coaching a genuine career.
Oh,
He was
absolutely.
he really was a pioneer in that regard, and made it acceptable. It wasn't just something you went to when you figured out you weren't good enough as a player. And to have, I mean, I know David a little bit, and to have a compliment like that come from him was extremely meaningful. So yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of really cool experiences, but me being, I'm guessing this is me as a kind of typically downbeat west of Scotland middle-aged man. I didn't spend enough time enjoying the good times, and I spent way too much time dwelling on the bad times. And the bad times do far outweigh the good times, whether you're playing golf or whether you're coaching golf. The challenging times are way more humorous than the real high points. And I didn't enjoy some of the high points as much, or I didn't recognise them as much as I should have done.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Lomond Golf Tours for their support. Let's hear from them now.
At Lomond Golf Tours Scotland, we understand that choosing the perfect golf trip can bring its challenges. With more than 500 golf courses in Scotland and another 2,000 around the UK and Ireland, many of our guests don't know where to start. But for Lomond Golf Tours, it's not just about the golf, it's about providing an experience that will exceed expectations, that will turn dreams into realities, and that will create memories that last a lifetime. Lomond Golf Tours have helped thousands of guests build bespoke golf trips to create a magical experience. Travel in style, whether executive chauffeur travel, whether it's golf on a major championship venue or one of our hidden gems, 5-star accommodation or a boutique bed and breakfast, or is it whisky tasting on a private boat? Lomond Golf Tours are here to help build the tour of a lifetime. Whether you're celebrating a special occasion or ticking it off your bucket list, embark on a trip that you'll remember forever. To learn more about our offerings for 2025 and beyond, visit www.lomondgolftours.com.
Now let's get back to the pod. I know. I was just saying there that I had Mark Immerman on the show recently, and you're talking about experiences there, and he said that one of his regrets is that whilst he travelled the world, and especially Europe, he didn't necessarily get the opportunity to go and see all the different places because the focus is so much on the player and everything that you're trying to achieve. Have you got those? Have you got experiences like that yourself?
Um, no, not really, because I've made a decision quite early that I'm not going to be away from home for 3, 4, 5 days a week and not see at least see a little bit of where I am. So I made a conscious effort to go to the nearest big city to have dinner. I made a conscious effort to stay away from kind of official hotels
Ah,
as much,
okay.
because I quite like spending time on my own, and also I think that was quite healthy for me just to be able to decompress effectively after each day. But it meant that I was able to see a little bit more of the local area rather than just being stuck in an official hotel where you got in a car, got to the golf course, did the same rinse and repeat for 3 days, and then straight back to the airport. So I
Yeah,
was, and that was, I mean, my father traveled a lot with his business, and I think that influenced me to try and at least take some of it in, which again may be one of my smarter decisions, because I have been able to. There's not many places on the planet that I've not been that I want to go, and
fantastic.
it's meant that I also know a lot of places very well, so I can go back now as a tourist rather than professionally, and enjoy them.
And just one that's always find interesting. I've heard other coaches talking about it. If you've got more than one player at the same tournament, how do you manage to put that timeline together when you're trying to work with them both, or maybe even three or four at the same time? How does that work?
Yeah, it's like juggling goldfish. It's hard because you have some players that are extremely regimented, who say 10 o'clock on the range is 10 o'clock on the range,
Right.
and they're obviously easy to deal with. And then you've got other players that are a little bit more laissez-faire and work with less structure. It doesn't mean that one is a better or worse player than the other. Tour coaching is 95% boredom, 5% manic chaos, because you do seem to spend an awful lot of your time doing nothing. I think back now, I've got loads of things that occupy my time now. I'm thinking, God, I wasted so much time sat on the back of a driving range on tour, and there
Sitting
isn't
with
a
a
way.
camcorder.
Yeah, correct. It was. Yeah, I don't think I ever mastered it, but I don't think it's something you can master because everyone is so different. It was always you knew there were certain players that you could schedule exactly the same time every week, and then you knew there were certain players that were a little bit more laid back about it, and generally those guys weren't that bothered if you couldn't see them,
Yeah.
or if you said, listen, I've got to go in 20 minutes because I've got an appointment with this player. And I made it quite clear to the players when I start working with them. I said, listen, if you schedule a time with me, I will be there. But if you don't schedule a time and I'm busy, you're going to have to wait. And certain players like that, certain players didn't like that.
Brilliant. And then here you talked about, so you're not traveling on tour anymore at this time, is that right?
No, I stopped doing it but basically it coincided with COVID, like many kind of
Ah,
life-changing, I
right.
guess, experiences for people, that I wasn't enjoying it leading up to COVID. Then COVID kicked in, and obviously we all had a chance to take stock, which meant that I decided to pursue other things. At the same time, I started going back on tour when we were allowed, and those traveling experiences were miserable.
Yeah.
So it basically confirmed that my time doing that for now is done. I'm not sure. You never say never, but I don't see myself going back on tour at any time soon.
So then I guess you're not seeing yourself defined by coaching tour players. So what's the motivation for continuing to coach people? What is it that really um I guess
I
gives
mean,
you that inspiration to keep going?
I love golf, and I guess part of it is kind of me wanting to make golf better when I leave it than when I arrived. It's really that simple. And I enjoy seeing people play better golf. I enjoy being around golf. I'm still as fascinated by everything involved in coaching and the game as I was 30 years ago. So it's much more a kind of passion for making the game better now. And that's what led me into coach education and starting to coach coaches, was that as a coach I can influence one player at a time, but as a coach educator I can influence a ton of players through these coaches that I'm helping. But yes, it's just a passion for golf, nothing else.
Yeah, and you touched on it there. So you're actually coaching other coaches to, I guess, improve their own delivery with players. So what's that journey been like for you?
It's something I've always been interested in. Curiously, I never spent an awful lot of time formally learning from other coaches or other experts. I wanted to do it all myself. I was quite stubborn when it comes to that kind of thing. And it wasn't a conscious thing. It was just like I enjoyed the process of going and really researching a topic and then trying to turn it into some principles that I could coach, because I felt that approaching it that way was I'd get a proper understanding, whereas just going and paying to listen to a coach was, I'm basically paying for the answers. I didn't get the understanding that came from it,
Right, okay.
or that I think I need to be able to coach effectively. So I've always been, but then because I didn't think the coach education was particularly good at the time, and it's not got any better now, that actually there's a market here. The industry's full of people that want to get better, and they don't really know where to go to do it. So there's a real kind of space in the market for me to be able to jump into, and touch wood, that's going to be something that I mean, I love it. It's being able to watch other coaches thrive, to see them improve, to see them happier in the work, to see them doing a better job is incredibly rewarding.
Fantastic. And then golf coaching's evolving a lot, I guess. You've seen it all, right? You mentioned starting earlier on with wooden shafted wooden shafted golf clubs. So where do you see technology and golf coaching going over the next 5 to 10 years? And do you think it's an exciting time for it?
I think it's always exciting, because the thing about technology is you don't know where it's going to go next. I think in terms of being able to physically measure what happens with players, we've probably squeezed the rag dry now. I think there'll be huge steps forward in how humans learn movement. Actually, the neurophysical element of it, how can we more effectively get players to process new movement? I think that's going to be a big area. I think as we can start to measure change in grip strength and grip pressure during the swing, I think that'll be quite enlightening. And I think that will bust a ton of myths that will help players play better. But the big elephant in the room is AI. And as an industry, I mean, someone put it to me years ago. A friend of mine said that the golf industry is very good at telling you what the weather's doing today, but it's absolutely useless at telling you what it's going to do tomorrow. And I still think we're in that space, that we've got this kind of specter of AI looming over every part of our life, but golf coaching seems to be trying to keep it at arm's length. And that makes me nervous, because it's not going anywhere. And if you look at AI's influence in pretty much everything we do in our life, it's playing a bigger and bigger and bigger role. And those organizations, those sectors that are embracing AI will have a massive advantage over those that aren't. And when it comes to the message I hear from a ton of golf coaches is, well, AI is never going to be able to coach as well as I can coach. For now, that's the case. And I completely get where they're coming from, and that understanding the human being is so fundamental. Being able to communicate differently is to each and everyone is so fundamental. But within the year, you will stand in a driving range somewhere on the planet, and there will be an AI coach telling you things. It's not that far away. And I think, I mean, it's something I'm exploring, that an AI coach for certain parts of the game or certain elements of the game could probably do a better job than a human being. And the truth is that we're already surrounded by AI in our golf coaching.
Absolutely.
Every one of the technology companies in some capacity is employing AI to improve their product. If we resist the onset of AI, then for those of us that do, I think we'll end up being overtaken. That it's the future of the planet. for good or bad. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's all good. I think there's some terrifying things that could come out of this in terms of world peace, in terms of just geopolitics. There's massive concerns there. Could AI influence our golf coaching positively? 100% it can. But to continually tell yourself that AI is not going to be able to do the job that you can is, I think, being a little bit dismissive of it. It's going to impact us somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it there, Hugh. It's not necessarily that it's going to replace every single element of golf coaching.
No.
But there might be some parts that can make easier for the coach, so they don't need to worry about it, right? So, and I'm making up, it could be something like alignment, it could be grip, whatever, and you're talking about grip pressure and those kind of things. It might be something that just allows the coach to focus on the more holistic picture with the player versus getting caught up in all the details all the time.
Well, I mean, and are we getting caught up in details that make any difference whatsoever a lot of the time?
Yeah.
But in terms of as we become more and more aware of facts in golf, facts in movement, facts in impact, that lends itself perfectly to AI.
Yep.
That when it becomes a little bit more subjective, like how am I going to communicate with you versus a 70-year-old lady, and then we've got to take into account nationalities, intelligence, emotional state, all the different things that combine to make great communication. That's going to be harder, and it's going to take a lot longer for AI to be able to do effectively. But the factual stuff, no reason why that can't be delivered now.
Absolutely.
But it is being delivered in a crude way by a lot of the technology companies.
Yeah.
But because AI in golf just now is fairly poor, and we instinctively we don't trust something new anyway, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be poor. AI is getting better way quicker than the human race is getting better.
Well, that's the whole point, right? It's continually learning from input and what you're doing and the information you're giving it. You could be giving it, as a golfer, I can definitely give AI plenty of crap information about how I hit it. But it can learn about those boundaries that I've got in the game.
Figure out its crap.
Yeah. So Hugh, what about your own golf? Do you get to play much these days? Do you get out at all?
Not enough. I mean, I kind of walked away from tour life with the expectation that I'd play more and the desire to play more, which I did for a couple of years. But as the coach education side has flourished, I just haven't had the time to do it, and I don't like that. I've always been a great believer that people who coach golf for a living should be actively engaged in playing golf in some capacity, just so that they're able to empathize with their students. The golf is pretty freaking hard, and I just don't think it's. I know it's a good message when you've got someone who hasn't played for 3 years coaching people, but I play as much as I can, and I'm lucky that I'm a member of other than with my travels. I get to play some amazing places, so I still enjoy it as much as I can.
Fantastic. So Hugh, just wrapping up here, where can people follow you and get to know more about you as a coach and get in touch potentially with you?
Well, Hugh Marr Coaching is my Instagram handle, and basically I've got a number of different URLs, but if you head to the coachalliance.co, that tells you much more about the coach education services that I'm involved in, and yeah, you can hear my rantings about the state of the coaching industry on Instagram.
Yeah, you didn't get too much into them today, but absolutely, I've had a little look through those. They're entertaining, brilliant though.
Well, it's I mean, part of it's meant to be tongue in cheek with a serious message that ultimately we can all do a better job, and it's something that we should all be striving to do. We can't sit back and accept that we know everything and think that nothing else. Every single day we're surrounded by information that can help us get better, and it would be foolish. We've got an obligation to the game of golf and to our clients to ensure that we are getting better as quickly as they are. The reality is that people come to us to get better. So would I go to a coach that wasn't personally trying to get better? Categorically not.
That's a good way to look at it. That is a very good way to look at it.
And all the older coaches that are well renowned in the game, regardless of age, they all have this really interesting setting where they want to be proven wrong and constantly looking to get better at what they do. Even guys like Clive Tucker, Dennis Pugh, who in any other walk of life would probably have retired, but their drive to continually improve staggers me. It's inspiring to be around people like that. You expect that of youngsters, but when you're surrounded by these people that have huge reputations, who've helped golfers all over the world of all standards, and they're still striving for progress, that's pretty inspiring. So my message to golfers is really simple: if your coach isn't trying to get better, go find another one.
Yeah, and even Butch Harmon, I've listened to a few podcasts with Butch, and one of the things that he talks about is going, as a coach, take a seminar with someone you have got no agreement with at all as a coach. You don't believe in anything they talk about, and he said, guarantee you'll go to that seminar and you'll learn something that you didn't know before, and you'll actually get a different appreciation for the person. Always found it a really great philosophy, though.
I think it's absolutely true, and Andreas Kalle, who's a Danish coach, I think one of the, if not the best junior development coach in world golf. He's a great mate of mine, but we have everything about our career is diametrically opposed. The way we've achieved the status we've achieved, or achieved the standing in the game, and we present a couple of camps a year together. We pretty much agree on nothing, but the core things that we agree on are, it's our job to make players better. Let's base this on fact. Let's deal with data. Let's make every player's impact better rather than giving them prettier golf swings. So that's the kind of core philosophy that we agree on, but everything else we argue like hell on. And it works. I mean, he's made me a better coach. I've made him a better coach. And together we've influenced a bundle of coaches worldwide through our contrasting approaches, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Hugh, it's been really kind of you to come on. Apologies for me coughing everywhere.
Pleasure, Ross, lovely.
But an interesting time trying to get through this. But I really appreciate you joining me. Thanks so much. That's it for this episode of Link by Golf. A big thanks to Hugh Marr for joining us, sharing his insights on coaching, continuous learning, and what it really takes to help players get better. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with your friends and hit subscribe. It really helps support the growth of the show. Thanks to Lomond Golf Tours for the continued support. For a truly unforgettable golfing experience in Scotland, get in touch with Ian and his team. Until next time, take care and thanks for tuning in.